Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining QMX Gold's live investment summit today, hosted by SIX. Highly successful exploration in an excellent jurisdiction. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers today. On screen, you've got Brad Humphrey, Chief Executive Officer, President, and Director. We also have Dr. Andreas Brompel, Vice President Exploration on the line, as well as Melanie Pichon, Exploration Manager. The team today is going to walk you through a company presentation, and after that, we will be taking questions in a live Q&A session. As a reminder, you can submit your questions in the right-hand side using the Q&A tab at any point during the presentation. Our deck today is also available in the Handouts tab for you to download, as well as on qmxgold.ca under the Events section of the website. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Brad to kick things off.
Hi, thanks, Jane. And thanks to everyone taking the time to hear more about the QMX story. We wanted to also thank SIX for hosting this event. I'll start out with a brief overview, and then Andy and Melanie will take you through a more in-depth presentation on the geology of the region, QMX's targets, drilling in 2020, and our plans in 2021. So just to start, the first slide, I encourage everybody to read the forward-looking statements. We will be making a number of forward-looking comments, and this is very important disclosure. So what is QMX? QMX trades under the symbol QMX on the TSX Venture Exchange. It's 100% focused on gold exploration in the Val-d'Or mining camp in the Abitibi Greenstone belt in Quebec, Canada. This is one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world, and it hosts multiple gold and base metal mines and continues to report new discoveries. We control nearly 200 square kilometer land package right in the heart of the Val-d'Or mining camp. We're located just to the east of the town of Val-d'Or, which is a key mining center. We have Eldorado Gold's Lamaque mine to the west of us, Probe Metals to the north, and O3 mining to the south. We started drilling in mid-2017 and have rapidly moved our targets forward with our most advanced project, Bonnefond, reporting its maiden resource in mid-2019. And we recently released an interim update showing a material percentage increase at that project, with the indicated resources increasing 53% and the inferred resources increasing 100%. Given we're in a highly prospective region with multiple historic operating mines on and around our property, we have a lot of targets and a full pipeline of targets for future drilling programs. QMX was a producer in the past, and as a result, we own a permitted mill and tailings facility. We do evaluate custom milling opportunities as they arise, but our primary focus is on exploration. Earlier in 2020, we entered into an option agreement with O3 Mining where they have the option to acquire the mill and tailings along with the liabilities at any time over a 6-year term. And if the option is exercised, QMX will maintain access to its current throughput rate at cost. So very much a win-win transaction for both QMX and O3. Over the years, QMX's systematic and methodical approach to its large land package and its highly prospective land package has attracted a lot of corporate support. And as a result, we're fortunate enough to have most of our neighbors as shareholders, including Eldorado, O3, Osisko Gold Royalties, and Probe Metals. They're all very supportive shareholders. And Eric Sprott also participated in a financing we completed in March of this year. Before we get into the exploration details, here's some information on the stock. There's a market cap comparison with most of our peers in the immediate area. We primarily trade on the Canadian exchanges, but we do have listings elsewhere, and we do currently have research coverage from Mackey Research. This is our land package. For reference, our most advanced project is Bonnefond. Bonnefond is sort of in the middle of the project on the eastern side. You can see Bonnefond deposit in the east zone. For your reference, our river target is way over on the western side, part way up. The distance between those two targets is approximately 16 kilometers. And then where we'll be drilling this winter at Bevcon on the far east side. The distance between Bonnefond and Bevcon is approximately 5 kilometers. So very large property with gold showings all over the property. Our mill and tailings are located sort of in the middle of the northern part called the Burlamac zone, and it's amongst the past producing mines Dumont, Lac Carbon, and Fertiber. Eldorado's Lamac mine over here on the western side of our property, O3 to the south, and you can see Probe's property there to the north of us. In 2017, we set out to prove reinterpretation of the geologic model on our property, which we have done successfully, as our results really speak for themselves. We've completed more than 100,000 meters since then. We've released a maiden resource at Bonnefond and recently announced that interim update at Bonnefond. And we've made discoveries, and we've also expanded on known gold showings. So even though we've accomplished a lot in a very short period of time, we are still just scratching the surface on this property. I won't get into too much detail on this slide. It is my favorite slide in the slide deck. I'll leave it for Andy and Melanie to get into the exploration successes and where our targets are. But so we're the gold color. You can see all the success we've had all over the property. And, clearly Bonnefond's been reporting some significant successes, and that's what's been driving our resource growth at that project. So with that, I'd like to let Dr. Andy Rumpel, our VP of Exploration, get into the geology and the Abitibi region in general.
Thank you very much, Brad. And if you look at the next slide, you see where we are. We are in the Abitibi. The Abitibi is one of the best preserved greenstone belts. Its age is about 2.79 to 2.69 billion years ago. This is way before the dinosaurs existed. And it stretches from about the west of Timmins to the east of Val-d'Or, and it covers a big portion of Ontario and a big portion of Quebec. And as you can see on this map, the important features are these red lines. These are mega shear zones, which run more or less east-west, and you see many of the mines are actually located on these shear zones. This is our property, and if you can see, Val-d'Or is here, and we're to the east of Val-d'Or, and the east-west extension is about 25 kilometers, north-south about 15 kilometers. We have a huge land package, and it is in and around the Burlamac batholith, which is a very prominent feature. And if you see the dashed lines, the dashed black lines, these are the shear zones, and they seem to form around these batholiths, and the interaction between the shear zones and the intrusions is highly important. The knowledge of the structural geology is highly important to come up with your target selection. And again, you see some of these mines, they sit on the shear zones. This is a map with our current targets that we have had selected for 2020, and they will continue into 21. And you see River, you see Bullmark here, Bonnefond, where we just have released a new 43101 with a resource estimate, and there is Bevcon on the side. And for further detail, I will pass on to our exploration manager in Val-d'Or, to Melanie Pichon.
Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about what we did in 2020 on Bonnefond, and what we're going to do in 2021, and more specifically the winter drilling program. So we're going to talk about the Bonnefond South deposit and the updated resource we just published. Then we'll talk about the new Louvre deposit, the Bevcon mine, our winter exploration program, and some other activities we have going on. So this is a location map of the eastern part of our camp that we call the East Zone. And what's important to see on that picture are the several intrusive we are working on. So the Bonnefond intrusive is on the northwest corner of the slide. Then southeast of east, we have the New Louvre intrusive, and the biggest one is the Befcan intrusive that hosts the historic Befcan mine. So this is a Bonnefond deposit. So it's a picture looking west, and it's the current geological model of Bonnefond. So there is a lot of things to see on that picture. First of all, I'm going to try to draw if I can. You can see here the Bonnefond intrusive. That's basically a large tonalitic pipe. And then we have a series of shear zones starting in the volcanics and extending through that intrusive, and the gold mineralization is hosted in those shear zones. In red on top of the picture, you can see the current open pit. So it contains the open pit resource we just published. And then we also have, now we have some resource underground. So if we check the resource update, so this is a new resource. What's important to see is that we've increased the indicated by 50% and the inferred by 100%. So basically we doubled the indicated resource with adding some underground resources. It's also important to note on the economic parameters that we are using realistic economic parameters for our resources. We are former producers, so we know the costs of mining, milling, and all that stuff. So it's important to us to have a strong resource, and that is realistic. These are some pictures of the new resource. So on the left side, you can see the geological model with the shear zones and the pit. And then the two other slides are views of the pit and the underground resource. So you can see where those resources are located. The pit is about 330 meters deep. Then the majority of the underground resource is located below the pit up to 500 meters down. And you can see the three blobs at depth that are running between 700 and 1,000 meters deep, which are basically our new exploration targets. So this is a core picture of what we intercepted at depth, the famous hole 121 that was published a few months ago. It was an exploration hole, and it intercepted some very interesting mineralization at depth in the intrusive, and we are now drilling that target. So now we're going to talk a bit about the New Louvre intrusive. So Bonnefond is on the northeast part of the slide, and just a bit south of it is the New Louvre intrusive. So it's a different kind of intrusive. It's a dioritic one. And on this slide, you can see the Bonnefond pit, and in purple at the bottom of the slide is the current geological model of the Bonnefond, of the New Louvre intrusive. So we drilled the New Louvre intrusive a bit in 2018 as a reconnaissance drilling program. And on the right corner of the slide, you can see some of the grades we intercepted. We haven't been working on it since, and it's now a drilling target for 2021. So for Bonnefond and New Louvre, these are our targets for the winter. So in the black circle in the north of the picture is what we call the North Exploration Drilling Program, north of the Bonnefond intrusive. So it was an exploration drilling program that we conducted during this fall. We just finished it. We are waiting for the assay results. Currently, we are drilling south of the Bonnefond intrusive and west of the New Louvre intrusive. We are basically searching for extensions towards the west of the New Louvre deposit and the shear zones of Bonnefond. And then in the red circles are the targets for the winter. I can change. Sometimes people ask us a lot why we're not drilling on New Louvre and other targets all year round. The reason is that everything that is east of the Bonnefond deposit, so basically everything that pink circle is the swamp area, so we can't access this. We can't access it during the summer. We have to wait for the winter. So for this winter, we're gonna drill the deep extension of the Bonnefond intrusive and the extension of the shears towards the east. Sorry, we're gonna drill the new Louvre intrusive, so to follow up on the results of 2018, and we're also gonna do a lot of exploration in the swamp east of Bonnefond. So currently, the drill holes that are permitted are close to 30,000 meters. We are not going to drill those holes. We are just making sure we have enough permits to run the winter drilling program. And now we're going to talk a bit about the Bonnefond intrusive and the Bonnefond historic mine. So this is a long section of the Bonnefond mine system. So we have two shafts, the Bonnefond shaft. So we have the Bonnefond shaft and the Bonnefond shaft, Bonnefond being the main shaft. The total depth of the mine is close to 650 meters, and all the red stars are the 2018 drilling program and some of the high-grade zones we intercepted. The white stars are historical drill holes. So basically what we know so far on the Bonnefond intrusive is that we have an historic mine that's hosted in shear zones in the northern margin of the intrusion, with mineralization known up to 1,000 meters down, with some historic drill holes and some holes we drilled in 2018. And we also know we have a possible extension towards the west with some of the holes we did in 2018, and we intercepted some high-grade area. I think the best hole will be the 15 in the middle of the screen with 137 grams per ton over 3.7 meters. So really high grade in quartz tourmaline vein hosted in shear zones. Then we are also running an exploration program on the western part of our project on what's called the Bollamac batholith. The Bollamac batholith is a huge intrusive body. It's known to host several mines in the area. We control the further Bergimont urban mines. And currently, so we started with the river zone, which is east-west of those mines. We started with river because it was the easiest target on the Bollamac. There was no mineralization. So we ran a short program in 2019, and we are currently running another exploration program. And in the same time, the project geologist who's running the program is running a full compilation and reinterpretation of the entire area to develop new exploration model. A bit about what we are doing on the side, because exploration is not only about drilling. So before we drill on a project, basically we go through an entire process. We start with database validation and compilation. We are in a very old mining camp, so we have a lot of data. So basically we reprocess all those data, make sure they're correct in our database. And then we compare this data with everything that's available. So the geology, the outcrops, the geophysics, the past geological models. Did somebody miss something? It's just an entire reinterpretation process. We reinterpret the structures, we reinterpret the geological model. We try to rebuild new geological model. And then we will usually do a reconnaissance drilling program or some more technical study. Do we need more geophysics? Do we need to do more field work, etc. Once we've run the first exploration program, we will do project reevaluation. Do we want to do more drilling? Do we want just to stop that project? And then we will continue with more drilling. And if things run according to plan, we usually end up with a resource. And yeah, and I will let Brad finish.
Yeah, so that was great, Melanie. Thank you, and thank you, Andy, for those your parts of the presentation. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly run through the mill. Like I said, although custom milling isn't our primary business, it is a good business, and having access to a permitted tailings facility is a good thing. So I just wanted to briefly touch on some of the details that we have at the Aurbel mill. So as I mentioned, it's located in the Burlamac zone. It's roughly 15 or so kilometers from east of Val d'Or, mostly along paved highways, so very good access. Our mill can be configured in any number of ways. Currently, it's got crushing, grinding, flotation, gravity, and leaching. But because it is a flotation mill and because it can be so customized, it does open us up to multiple different types of gold processing and base metal processing. So there's a number of options there, and we do evaluate custom milling opportunities as they arise. But our primary focus is evaluating and exploring our very large property. So we packed a lot of information into this presentation. So I just wanted to, reiterate the investment case. It is fairly straightforward and simple. Basically, a few key points. QMX is focused in one of the best jurisdictions in the world, and we control nearly 200 square kilometers right in the heart of the Val d'Or mining camp. QMX has reported repeated success all over the property, including a rapidly growing resource. And our approach, so specifically our systematic and methodical approach, and the results that we've put out to date have attracted a lot of corporate support, which, and particularly from our neighbors, which I think should add comfort to investors. And again, we've accomplished a lot in a very short period of time, but given the size and the quality of our property, and the depth potential, for example, on the eastern side of Val d'Or that's relatively unexplored, and we're showing you can hit very good grades at depth on the eastern side of our property. We are just scratching the surface at this project, and we're very excited going into 2021 to kick off that program that'll be focusing on the east side of the east zone, just to the east of Bonnefond. Okay, and with that, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to participate in the 6th Summit, and we'll now open it up for questions. And I will kick it off at just reading some of the questions on the side here as they come up. There was a question about cost per meter. So in Val d'Or, it is one of the least expensive places on the planet for exploration. Drilling costs are around $110 a meter. If I take that even one step further and look at all flow-through dollars spent and divide that through by all the meters drilled, it comes out to between $130 and $140 a meter. So our exploration dollars go a lot further in Val d'Or than they would in some of the other places where you see people drilling, where it requires camps or helicopters or whatever. We are right next to a key mining center in one of the best jurisdictions in the world. There's a question here about how much money does QMX currently have and how much do we need for 2021? So this is a good question. So right now we're sitting between about $7.5 and $8 million, more than enough to complete the 45,000 meters we have planned for 2020 and get us into the winter program in 2021. When you look at exploration companies, there's really two things to look at. There's the hard dollar balances and the flow-through balances. On the hard dollar side, we're in great shape. And we also have a number of warrants that may come in to be exercised next year that will also help on that hard dollar side. On the flow-through side, when we put budgets together for drilling, Andy, Melanie, and I and the team in Val d'Or sit down and we have, a number of different budgets. We prioritize our targets that we'd like to drill. And when we get to that point when we're going to drill it, we see what the market conditions look like, what the opportunities are, what our balance sheet looks like. And that's when we move forward, either with our, smaller budget, medium budget, big budget, whichever one we happen to be at that particular time. And any exploration company that tells you that they aren't going to eventually need money, they may be optimistic. We will continue to be opportunistic, looking at the market, looking at the shareholders that are interested. Our preference is for long-term strong holders. And, at some point next year, we will, have to that we'll be looking at, and we'll be evaluating the market at that time. But right now, there's no urgency for that. Let me go on to the next one here. There's some questions on M&A. I really don't want to get too deep into that for, obviously I can't say what other companies are planning to do. I would suspect we're on a number of radar screens, given the results we put out. It's been spectacular where we're located, the team we have on the ground in Val d'Or. All of those things are, very good. From our perspective, we have a giant property with lots of targets on it, so we aren't necessarily out looking for something new. We do, evaluate things as they come up for sale, but it's not a high priority for us. But that's just ongoing part of the business. When is QMX going to fly? Hopefully soon. So what is the size for target and grade? So good question. Now, because we have so many targets and they're different, something like over in the Dumont on the Burlamac zone in the Dumont Lacquer Band Fertibur area, you could have something that's smaller on the ounces because it's much higher grade and relatively close to surface. It's already disturbed ground, depending on where it is, relatively close to our mill. Something like that could move forward pretty quickly. The open pit part of Bonnefond, I would say that it's met our targets. We aren't going to move forward with any kind of economic studies or development there until we know what the true scale is going to be, not only at depth, but also as we move to the east. Maybe Bonnefond is just part of something a much bigger project. If New Louvre becomes bigger or an intrusive to the east looks like Bonnefond, then that would be what the Bonnefond project would be. So we're still a ways off on something like that, but near surface, higher grade, that can move forward relatively quickly. But we are, make no mistake, we are an exploration company with multiple targets on a great project, great property in a very highly prospective area. So when I say we've just been scratching the surface, I truly, truly mean that. So there's a question about how many warrants were exercised. So pretty much all of the warrants that were in the money that expired at the end of November were exercised. I off the top of my head, I think it was 1.3 million, something to that effect. We do have about another $3.5 million worth that would be in the money now that expire in February and in June. So from a hard dollar perspective, like I said, we're in great shape from that perspective. And most of those, if you go back through the old financings, are in a few hands. So I do think that those will all be exercised before they expire. So there's a question on consolidation, and I get this frequently. So my background is in equity research, and I've looked at consolidations and done lots of research on consolidations. And that my personal view is, unless you're trading at 4 cents and have 1 billion shares outstanding, you only do a consolidation on some kind of company changing event. And usually you try to follow that up with some supportive type transaction afterwards. With our share count right now, it's about 390 million shares outstanding. Roughly 50% of it's locked up between our strategics and a few very high net worth that are almost at 10% individuals. So our float is really just half of our shares outstanding. So as of right now, it's not something that we are currently looking at. Of course, we always are opportunistic. We're always going to be valuing everything. And but as of right now, that's not something that I would see us doing anytime soon. And so there's a good question on COVID and how it's affected QMX. I think what I'll do is maybe I'll open up the Q&A period section here to allow Melanie to jump in, since she's the one on the ground in Val d'Or. Here in Toronto, you know, mining executives, we work remotely a lot of the time, so it really wasn't that big of an impact for us. The back office side of the business very quickly and efficiently moved remote, and it's worked very well in Toronto. But where the operations are happening in Val d'Or, I'll let Melanie answer that part.
So regarding COVID, when COVID came, the good thing that we knew confinement was coming, so we had the time to prepare for it. It came at the end of the winter drilling season, so we were able to finish the majority of the winter program. The only hole we were not able to drill were really exploration holes that were not needed to update the resource, or that were not really necessary to run the rest of the year. We used the confinement to work on data validation and target generation. So we managed to keep the team busy, and it was actually kind of the confinement was useful. It gave us the time to look at the project, take a step back, do more compilation, do all those things we don't have the time to do when we're drilling. So we came out of confinement with drilling targets ready and ready to move back to operation. So we had some delays, of course, and we still see some delays because now all companies have to work with social distance and stuff like that. Here in Val d'Or, we are very lucky. We're in a remote area, so we don't have a lot of COVID cases. So everything is running. Regarding the day-to-day operations, we just have to be careful and follow health regulations. So in the office, it's social distancing and wear your mask, and everything is running smoothly. We just see some delays, mostly with our contractors who are located in big cities and some consulting companies. But other than that, COVID hasn't affected us so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Melanie. We're also very lucky. When the original property package was put together in 2003, 2004, a large portion of the ground was acquired from Ore Resources, and as part of that, the Ore Resources Exploration Office, which is where Melanie's sitting right now, it's quite large, and you know, we have a relatively modest team, so there is quite a bit of space. So the social distancing part is something that we can do quite effectively there. So it's a question: what are the benefits of being in Val d'Or? So, you know, I can't say it enough. It's one of the best places to operate as an exploration company that I've ever seen. Any kind of equipment, consultants, contractors, you name it, it's there. It's a major mining center in the region. And, you know, on top of that, we don't require camps for our exploration teams. We don't require helicopters to get our drills into place. Access is very good. It's easy for us to get in and out of Val d'Or. You know, pre-COVID, there was flights going up from Montreal, and even beyond that, if we want, we can drive from Toronto. It's not a difficult drive. So, great spot to be. Relatively inexpensive drilling, as I mentioned in the earlier questions, and you know, also being surrounded by a number of companies that are doing great work. It helps us get up the learning curve really quickly. And that's why, even though we started a little later than everybody else, we've been rapidly closing the gap between where they're sitting and where we are, because, you know, great talent pool located right there in Val d'Or. So there's a question about upcoming catalysts. So the we're completing a very large drill program. We are pending assay results on a number of our targets. We have another very large program starting this winter on some very prospective targets that, if you go back to that slide I said was my favorite slide, you can see the results that we got from those targets when we drilled on them in the past. So I think the results from that will be catalysts. There will be anything that we prove to the east, or anything we discover to the east of Bonnefond, should be a big catalyst, because you can show that, okay, Bonnefond is this, it's growing at depth, and now there's something just to the southeast that looks similar, whatever it happens to be. You can start to see how this could rapidly grow into something even larger. So I would say that would be a catalyst. Timing assay results, very challenging right now. We did add a second lab for part of our projects. Part of the delay was we're sending in, we're not sending in 10 meters for assay. We're sending in 1,000-meter assays, samples for assay. So we were causing part of that delay. So we moved our other projects onto a different lab to reduce that. But everybody's up, all the producers are updating their resources right now for year end. There's a number of large drill programs happening all around us, including our own. And, we saw delays like this back in 2017 when we first started drilling, and the results eventually come. We're still drilling. We're not taking, we have enough targets that we don't have to do anything that's sort of results dependent. And if it is results dependent, we can move on to the next target, start drilling that one while we're waiting for the results. So it doesn't hurt us operational wise, but it, obviously we're all anxious to see the results, and they will come. And it's just hard to say exactly when that would be, but those will all be catalysts that'll be coming over the next few months. Yeah. So there's a question that sort of relates to what are our thoughts on the interim update at Bonnefond? And, we'd always been saying it's going to be a material percentage increase. It was, inferred went up 100%, indicated went up 53%. Those are pretty meaningful jumps. For me personally, the first of the maiden resource, we just wanted to prove that you could build an economic pit shell at Bonnefond, because we've been doing all this drilling, and that's sort of your, report card at the end. Yes, it's economic. We use very conservative parameters. You can look them up on the press release, and the full study will be out in January. We're very realistic. Like Melanie said, we used to be producers. We know what it costs for milling. We know what it costs for transport. We know what milling costs are. Very realistic. It's based on a $1,450 gold price. Again, certainly not overly aggressive. And this interim update, for me, I knew we were going to grow the in-pit. Obviously, you've seen the results. But for me, what was important was, can we put economic parameters around an underground resource? Because if we can do that, we have a zone from 350-meter depth down to at least 1,000-meter depth. And we're in the Abitibi. Mines go down much deeper than 1,000 meters. So that was what I was most anxious to see, and very happy to see that it that hangs together and can be economic parameters can be put around it to mine it from underground. And that's where we'll be continuing to focus there. So yeah, we were very happy with that, and we're going to continue. I mean, you use these sort of interim updates as, should we continue to deploy capital there? And I absolutely think that's the case here. And who knows what is around it now that we can start drilling the eastern side as it gets colder in Val d'Or. So just, another question sort of continues on from what I just said. So do you expect the grades at depth to be economical? So absolutely, I do. We've shown that at the very bottom of that deep hole we put out in August, it was 35 grams over 4 meters. So if we can show that that is continuous, it's one hole. So we can show that's continuous. Absolutely, that'd be economic at depth. And we've got another several holes that are either at the labs, in process, or planned, and we'll be wedging off of those holes to also fill out that, to follow up on the drilling we're doing at depth. So we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think it was economic. We have lots of targets. So if we're sticking with a target, it means that we absolutely think it's going to grow and be economic. We have a lot of targets. Aren't forced to make something work. We're very excited. Okay, and that looks like about it on the Q&A that we haven't already answered. There's like I said, there's some M&A questions, but we really can't comment on what other companies would do. I would say that we're in a pretty good position where we've got multiple corporates. So it's not like one is necessarily controlling the outcome if something was to happen. So that's puts us in a pretty favorable position as well. But with that, I think I'll pass it back to Jane to do any of the closing remarks.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brad. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Andreas and Melanie for taking us through the presentation and, of course, answering all of the audience's questions in detail. I also want to thank everyone in the audience who submitted questions. If you just thought of a question now, or if you think of one even after the closing of our event today, please stick around. We have a short survey that you can leave your details so that the QMX Gold team can reach out to you directly and do any follow-ups that's necessary. You can also find more information on their website listed here on the slide at www.qmxgold.ca. And as we mentioned, the deck today can be downloadable there on the website under the events section. Now, Brad, I'll hand it back to you for the final word.
Yeah, so there's I'll just end with one last Q&A question. Sorry, it just came in. We do get asked a lot about the Forbes and Manhattan Group. So way back in 2003, 2004, the company QMX was called Alexis Minerals, predecessor company. The land package was put together with the support of a group called Forbes and Manhattan. They're more focused on development and production. So they put lacquer band into production. They started building or developing a mine in Manitoba. Tough economic times, ended up coming back to this property that's now in QMX. And when I joined in 2016, we refocused the company as an exploration company. And as part of that, we really weren't a core focus for the Forbes and Manhattan Group. And we have since no longer have any ties with them. We just made more sense for us to be standalone, and we were no longer, one of their, core competencies, which is development and production. So that answers that last question there. But thank you everybody for joining in, and we will stay tuned.
All right, thanks everyone. Until next time, bye now.